the 17th day of March 2025, a very, very cold day in Nairobi. I don't know how the weather is. Where are you watching Morning Cafe from? This is the Morning Cafe. How hot is your coffee this morning?
All right, my name is Fred Indimuli, and about the weather, we'll be telling you more about it. In Nairobi, it's raining a bit, but where else are we getting the rains? Stand by for that.
Absolutely. And on to the local dailies. We start off with the Standard road tax tyranny.
Oh yes, it appears to be the biggest discussion this morning. That's the Standard. On the Star, carry goes for small traders. Still matters taxation.
Right. Daily Nation, how jobs and pay crisis hit families.
Still into the same. Something different on the People Daily, why Nemis data could be unsafe. We'll be telling you more about what exactly happened.
Taifa Leo, Ole Sapit akausha Kalonzo na Gachagua.
Matters business, most stolen vehicles revealed as recovery rises to 15%. We'll be about to tell you which kind of car, if you own it, it's likely to be stolen.
Absolutely. Sawa sawa.
So on State of the Nation, these are the three gentlemen who will be with us on the panel. Ruto Rapkirwa, former Agriculture Minister, Danso Mugatana, Senator Tana River, and Dr. Makali Mulu, MP Central. That coming your way, started at 6:30 this morning.
Absolutely. Later on, we will be having Monday Blitz from 8 to 9. And then after that, we'll be having this conversation with Patrick Muraguri, that is CEO of Have a Go Business Systems, on managing your small business remotely with the digital system. Later on, let's cross over and take a look at the regional dailies. We start off with the East African. And where have all the oil and gas investors gone? That is the question being asked there on the front page of the East African. And in spite of huge oil and gas fines, East African countries are struggling to convince investors to pump money in oil and gas projects, growing opposition to fossil fuels and lack of proper policies to protect investments and making it worse. This story is on page 4 and 5. On the top strip, Angola invites protagonists to peace table, and litmus testers Kinshasa M23 rebel group prepare for first ever talks in Luanda. We see a photo there of members of the M23 rebel group in Goma, South Kivu. This is a photo taken on January 30th this year. Of course, ile wakati vita ilitamba huko. That's the East African. Let's take a look at the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Different pages. The leadership of the armed forces and the respective line ministries have spoken different languages on two very important matters to Ugandans: the deployment of the UPDF in South Sudan and mass security operatives on the streets. What else don't they agree on? And they're quoted here. We see on South Sudan, that is the Defense Minister Jacob Oboth saying whatever Honorable Samuji is saying on deployment of UPDF in South Sudan. I'm not aware of any formal communication that has been made. You see, as a journalist, he could access information that I, as a lawyer, may not be able to access, because as a lawyer, my information has to be very formal. Kama sisi wanahabari zetu ni informal. We see the Chris Magenzi, acting Deputy Defense Public Information Officer there, saying the UPDF acted decisively on the request of South Sudan to avert a dangerously developing situation. This action is also in the interest of regional security. The Honorable Minister of Defense is never involved in the operational matters of UPDF. His job is simply to represent his parliament. Now, the leadership is uncoordinated, as the Daily Monitor puts it. Kule chini, who stole whose vote? Now, contest, the ruling National Resistance Movement Party, that is NRM, yes, NRM party, and its leader, President Museveni, have accused the opposition National Unity Party of attempting of messing up the Kawempe North by-election in its favor. That was last Friday. I'm really struggling to see that.
That's very ironical, because you can imagine, even in Kenya, we always accuse the sitting administration of stealing the vote,
votes.
not the other way around.
Yeah.
That now you're accusing the opposition of stealing the vote. That's exactly what's happening in Uganda. So who stole whose vote between President Museveni and NUP leader naitwaje hapa Bobi Wine? Yes.
All right, that's the Daily Monitor.
Take a look at the New Vision still in Uganda, and yes, this judge of the High Court that was arrested somewhere in the UK, Mugambe, that's her name, the woman in the storm. Government moves to save embattled High Court judge. She was arrested on allegations of slavery and trafficking, a domestic worker, to the UK and making her work without pay. That's the accusation. So she was, and she works for the UN. She's a very high-ranking judge. So what exactly will happen with that? The other story given prominence on the front page of the New Vision matters education. Stiff university cutoffs expected, and we rarely get to see this. But yes, these are the main, the top performers from the high school, and you give them some of the points they've already gotten, 20 points and above for the admission to university. Pale juu, they make mention of that election dispute. President Museveni speaks out on Kawempe North by-election. I think he never imagined he could lose that by-election, or his party would lose. But they did. Now they're saying, opposition waliba kura. Ay, wapi.
Only in Uganda.
You know, once President Museveni came when Mwai Kibaki was still president, and because Mwai Kibaki had been accused of stealing elections, and then Museveni said something very interesting. Ati kwa nini hamjui kuiba kura?
Kwani yeye hajui kuiba kura ya Kawempe.
Yes.
All right, that's the New Vision in Uganda. Let's cross over to Tanzania. Gazeti la Mwananchi, ACT ya wachongea Wasira na Mbeto. Othman awatwisha zigo la lawama sakata la kuzuiwa kuingia Angola, ataka mamlaka ziwachukulia hatua kwa kuipaka matope serikali. Mbeto ajibu mapigo, akoleza moto. There are very many stories here, lakini nimeshika hiyo ya Angola, ile ni leaders walifungiwa nje. And our very own Edwin Sifuna.
Senator alikuwa huko, alikuwa amekasirika sana.
I saw a very funny statement from a tweet yesterday. I think I'll share with you after. Wanasema pale, that is Othman Masoud, anasema upotashaji wao, that is Wasira na Mbeto, umeipaka matope serikali na kuwafadhaisha wananchi. Wanapaswa wachukuliwe hatua kwa sababu wamekwenda kinyume na wajibu wao, na huo ndio wito wetu. Matters politics there. Fursa nyingine tena, vijana 200 kulipiwa mahari. Rais wa Zanzibari Daktari Hussein Mwinyi akihutubia maelfu ya waumini wa dini ya Kiislamu waliohudhuria mashindano ya 25 ya kimataifa ya uhifadhi wa Quran ambayo yamefanyika katika uwanja wa Benjamin Mkapa. Hiyo ni huko Dar es Salaam. Lakini vijana 200
watalipiwa mahari na serikali. Wana mchezo hawa. Hao kilipiwa mahari hapa ni vishandu tu, watikisa matukio ya uporaji. Polisi waliamsha, wanaenda wakipora wanawake vibeti vyao. Dar es Salaam, ukiacha kurahisisha usafiri katika maeneo yenye msongamano na kuokoa muda, usafiri wa pikipiki maarufu bodaboda katika jiji la Dar es Salaam unatumika kwa uporaji.
Hata Kenya. Yeah. So East Africans change or perish.
Alafu wanalipiwa mahari na serikali. Jirani tafadhali.
They won't get the last of it. All right, that's Mwananchi.
On the Citizen, supermarkets under scrutiny over labeling rules violation. So they say several supermarkets in Dar es Salaam are under scrutiny for failing to comply with product labeling regulations amid concerns among consumers and regulatory authorities. The story is on page 2. And Quran competition showcases Tanzania's stability, says Mwinyi. I think it was the same event where we talked about how they pay dowry for about 200 men. Pale juu, experts reveal what undermines East Africa market potential. Alafu kumbuka, it is an election year in Tanzania. Angalia mahali wameweka story yao ya siasa. Pale kwa kona pale juu. CCM ACT trade blame over Angola entry denials. And that's the only politics you'll find on this front page in Tanzania. Lakini elections only months away in October.
Wako.
Yes.
All right. Let's take a look at the weather situation in the country. Status.
All right, and we just take a look at this satellite map courtesy of zoom.earth. And you can see there are two systems this area, southern part of the country, Nairobi to the southern side, county ya Narok pale, there's some cloud cover. Western side, Kisumu and neighboring counties there, Kakamega and Busia also with some slight cloud cover. And up north, Marsabit and parts of Turkana also experiencing some cloud cover. The rest of the country, not so much. So let's take a look at what exactly they're telling us. In Kisumu, this morning, it is 19 degrees Celsius, feels a bit warmer, 24 degrees, but it's cloudy, indeed cloudy. The highs of 29 degrees, which is a bit cooler than what we saw last week. 0.8 millimeters of rainfall expected there, but it promises to rain throughout this week, tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. So do expect thunderstorms in Kisumu. Let's take a look at Marsabit.
It's 21 degrees in Marsabit. It feels like 23, mostly cloudy. Hapa precipitation is 1.3 millimeters. A slight rainfall will be experienced kutoka saa moja hadi hapo saa tatu, but it will be sunny throughout the day with very little cloud cover. It promises to rain tomorrow hadi Friday. So Marsabit, the weather there will be a bit nice.
In Mombasa, it's quite warm this morning, 27 degrees Celsius. Feels like 31, mostly cloudy as well. A bit of precipitation there, 5.6 millimeters, which is much higher than what we've seen elsewhere. Highs of 32 degrees Celsius in Mombasa today. Some sunny intervals in the afternoon. They also do expect some rainfall tomorrow and Wednesday this week. That's Mombasa.
And in Nairobi, it's 17 degrees. It feels like it, mostly cloudy throughout the day. Highs of 25 degrees expected, a little bit of sunshine and a little bit of rain. So precipitation here is 2.5 millimeters. This will be felt. Tayari kunanyesha.
And it promises to be a wet week in Nairobi. Ile mvua ulisikia jana itaendelea.
Yeah. All right, it's about 13 minutes past the top of the hour. Let's take a look at the traffic situation in Nairobi.
It's Monday.
Yes.
Monday traffic loading. You can see the major tributaries into the CBD are getting busy. Areas on Jogoo Road, all the way from that Buruburu Junction, all the way to town, it's getting busy. You can see stretches of red and yellow. Once you get to the Machakos stretch, that's a Landis Road, it's also getting busy. So is Haile Selassie Avenue, both sides of the road, areas of Marikiti there. So if you're coming from that side, it is definitely getting busy. So is Kangundo Road, and you can see stretches of red, Apo Kayole, Komarok, as you get closer to Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital, both sides of the road. If you're using Kangundo Road, hapo utapata shida kidogo. Mahali kwingine kuna shida ya traffic, of course, Eastern Bypass, next to that roundabout, next to the KQ headquarters. It is a long stretch of red. This can actually be very problematic if you're using this area. Next to that road going to Embakasi village, you see around the, what do you call it, the roundabout. Hapo iko shida. Then once you get closer to Pipeline, you can see this whole stretch of red as you go to turn on Outer Ring Road, meaning anyone on that side this morning is going to be problematic for you. Yes, maneuvering your way to town, if you're coming from areas Nyayo Estate to Tawala, iko shida this morning. Mombasa Road is not looking so bad, and pale juu ile yetu ya kawaida inakuanga Thika Road.
Yes, very clear. Hapa iko sawa.
Hapa si mbaya sana. Normal traffic there on the Pangani interchange. The other side of the town, of the city rather, siita hii Nairobi town bwana. Town ile ndogo ndogo kama Kagumo. Ngong Road, it's looking good. I can see stretches of Naivasha Road not looking bad. Lang'ata Road, Raila Odinga Highway, Raila Odinga Way. Unajua watu wengi wajui barabara inaitwa hivyo. Mbagathi.
Iko.
Inaitwa Raila Odinga Way. It's green all the way. And this is Wayaki Way, all the way from Kabete past Kangemi, ABC Place to town. It's looking green, so not much to worry about there. So normal Monday traffic, but guys from the eastern side of town, leo kuna shida. Yes.
All right, let's take a look at the quote of the day.
Remaining silent in the face of injustice only impedes progress. Speaking up for what truly matters is crucial for creating change, whether in your own life or the wider world.
right, let's take a deep look into the local dailies, and we start off with the standard road tax tyranny. New burden: the government's plan to introduce road tolls could generate 4.8 trillion shillings. But at what cost? Critics say it's another financial strain on Kenyans, benefiting private firms while raising transport costs. With debt rising and infrastructure needs mounting, is this the solution or just another levy on an already overtaxed public?
Yes, it's interesting that some of the, within that policy that is being proposed, there'll be some introduction or return of some policies or proposals that were contained in the finance bill of 2024 that was rejected, including a tax on insurance premiums. You remember that one?
Yes.
So this proposal could actually includes that.
Yeah.
So most of those proposals in that finance bill are making a comeback in different ways. Yes.
All right, maybe we can just take a look at this quote. There exists an outstanding maintenance backlog estimated at 500 billion shillings. Other taxes paid by road users are not specifically allocated to the roads subsector. Road tolling should therefore provide a solution to the funding gap. Transport CS Davis Churchill is quoted here: Kenya has not implemented user charges for economic infrastructure. Roads should be funded through fuel levies and tolls where viable, ensuring passenger and freight transport operate commercially under the user pays principle. And 4.8 trillion shillings is the amount the government aims to generate through tolling. 500 billion shillings is the backlog in road maintenance due to El Nino damage.
All right.
On the top,
one of the other very interesting thing is just how will this fund be managed? And according to this report, they say that it mirrors the SHIF plan, that it could actually be handled. The management of this fund could be handled by private entities.
Yeah.
4.8 trillion shillings. Can you imagine? Yes. Maswali ni mengi sana.
Yep.
Road tax tyranny.
On the top strip, she left for work. Now she faces a death sentence. This is the story of Mary Nduta, the lady in Vietnam facing is it a death penalty? Yes. Boon for retirees, a new proposal, story on page 19. And Newville sets eyes on Elisi Safari Rally title. On the back page of this newspaper, PLS Junior Starlets 2 ties away from U17 World Cup return. And Arsenal age out Chelsea. Fulham beat Tottenham. Arsenal. Team kubwa.
Team kubwa.
All right.
Staying with the theme of taxation, KRA goes for small traders. Government is exploring new ways of taxing small businesses to ease the burden on salaried individuals and corporates. The story is on pages 4 and 5. It is interesting because, yes, pay slips are shrinking, and that's the same story I've seen on another daily. But this one is talking about how KRA is working to widen the tax bracket. State casts tax net wider to ease burden on employees' firms. But does it mean that once they widen the tax base, that they will reduce the taxation on pay slips? That's a question. So that's a big story there. Now ametumia picha anasema hard at work. Hawa ni small scale traders wenye wanakuwa targeted by KRA. Other quick highlights on the front page of the Star: Gachagua and Kalonzo muted as Sapit enforces pulpit ban for politicians. Jana waliambiwa simama, punga mkono tukuone, keti chini. Nataka kuongea utazungumza hapo nje. Family's agony of a son abducted outside Garissa Law Courts 4 years ago. That story is on page 24, and that's the Star.
Daily Nation, how jobs and pay crisis hit families. Same story na hiyo ya the Star. Shrinking pay for employees and job cuts have hit families hard as purchasing power for households has declined in recent years. A parliamentary committee report shows households will plunge into further financial distress owing to harsh policies like the skewed methods being applied to determine what families pay for university education and a state-run medical scheme that has seen some unfairly slapped with higher rates. Story on the education fund, yo mpya new education funding model as well as SHIF. Yo imesumbua sana wa Kenya. Inside Kenya's political merry-go-round, The political stage is a persistently dizzying carousel of intrigue and upheaval. Imagine leaving the country 6 months ago and returning now. You'd find a new Deputy President, Kithure Kindiki, and President William Ruto calling his once bitter rival Raila Odinga my brother and Prime Minister. In this land of political alchemy, nothing is as it seems. 2024 is the year Gen Z protesters stormed Parliament. The nation's politics is a riddle wrapped in a mystery where every move defies expectations. Ukitoka hapa urudi after 6 months utashangaa sana uko Kenya ingine. Kwani niko nchi ingine? Hustlers suffer as big fish evade 7 billion shillings taxes, and some institutions at OKRA fail to remit pay as you earn, that is pay that they deducted from employees' payslips, while others did not deduct, withholding tax from money paid to suppliers, and the taxman is denied these billions at a time. There are concerns about the government increasingly targeting salaried workers with numerous deductions, including housing levy and social health insurance fund fees.
And one of those is the Parliamentary Service Commission that is yet to remit about 1 billion shillings in pay. They've deducted from MPs and senators, but they're yet to remit that to KRA. Interesting.
Interesting. Killer Matatu crew jailed for life, offer no lesson to rogue peers. And James Gitao, Matatu driver, and his conductor Silas Ndungu are serving a life sentence for killing a passenger following a scuffle over 5 shillings bus fare 21 years ago. The stiff punishment has not been a deterrent if last week's incident where a conductor pushed a passenger out of a speeding bus is anything to go by. 5 shillings is insane.
5 bob.
At a 30 bob ile ya Super Metro, you know, last week.
Atu amka vibaya, kuna jamaa tu alikuwa na hasira.
Senators want counties given 465 billion shillings. This story is on the top strip of the Daily Nation. And devolution, this sets the stage for another battle with the national government, as the Treasury is proposing that devolved units gets 405 billion shillings equitable share for the financial year ending June 30, 2026. That story is on page 5 of the Daily Nation.
On the People Daily, it's a different story. It talks about NEMIS data could be unsafe. NEMIS is a system that has all the data for students, both in do they call it now primary school? Yes, primary school and secondary school as well.
Junior,
yes, so the Auditor General, Nancy Gathungu, just went to check because they've been asking for money to upgrade the system. But she realized that the ownership of this, just like SHA, just like eCitizen, just like this management of the road toll fund, even NEMIS apparently is in private hands. So that data, imagine, of all the children in Kenya who are in school, hawako sure who owns this platform. So that's why it could be unsafe. People Daily front page, they talk about big moment for new Nairobi Diocese Anglican bishop, and probably this is a story that escaped many because they focus too much on the former deputy president and the Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka being denied an opportunity to speak in church, but it was the day was actually for the new bishop of the Anglican Church of Kenya, Nairobi Diocese, Jonathan Kabiru. Yes. At least People Daily wamefanya justice to that story, wakaleta the other side of the story. Yes, that's a People Daily today.
All right. Taifa leo, Ole Sapit akanusha Kalonzo na Gachagua, of course the same story we're talking about. Haramu, Askofu Ole Sapit aharamisha wanasiasa wote kuhutubu katika kanisa Anglikana kote nchini, akisisitiza kwamba malumbano ya wanasiasa hayasaidii kusuluhisha matatizo yanayowakabili wa Kenya kama vile ushuru wa juu na kufeli kwa mpango wa afya wa SHA. Amesema sasa hata mkicontribute hiyo 20 million hakuna kusema kwa kanisa.
Unapeana huko na unanyamaza. Kama sadaka.
Barabara kupewa jina Patel wa Mombasa Cement. MCAs wapitisha hoja hiyo ili kumstahi Hasmukh Patel Kanji kwa hisani na maendeleo yake Mombasa. Gideon Moi akataa handshake na Rais Ruto. Kinara huyo wa KANU amekuwa akishinikizwa aridhiane na rais kisha awanie upya useneta ya kaunti ya Baringo. Habari zinginezo, mwanamke aliyetishia kujiua atimiza tishio lake. Mwili wapatikana ukielea katika mto Yala. Gazeti la Taifa leo hilo.
Let's focus on business news, and this is a Business Daily. Most stolen vehicles revealed as recovery rises to 15%. Now listen to this. Data from the insurance lobby, that's the Association of Kenya Insurance, shows that thieves mostly steal these vehicles to extract parts, making it difficult for the owners to recover their cars. So you have a high chance of losing a car to thieves if it's a station wagon, white in color, and a Toyota brand. So kama gari yako ni station wagon ya white Toyota, hiyo itaenda. And especially if it's insured for less than $1 million bob. So station wagons accounted for 67% of the 327 insured cars that were stolen in the year 2024. Yes, so you can read more about that on the front page of the Business Daily. They say station wagons, lorries most preferred by thieves, and the number of insured cars reported stolen drops by 28%. Another story there, City Hall disowns a 3.9 billion shilling Jamia Mosque roundabout deal. City Hall has disowned a deal where Jamia Mosque is seeking 3.9 billion shillings for ceding land used to build a Matatu terminus at Nairobi's Globe Cinema roundabout. Wow, I didn't know that Jamia Mall was laying claim to that space. On the ticker, debt service costs 69 billion shillings on higher domestic rates. KCB seeks 30% share of G2G oil deal payments. Big ticket deals keep Kenya law firms on global ranking lists. Those are just some of the other business-related highlights on the front page of the Business Daily. You can grab yourself a copy of this paper to read more on that.
All right. Tuangalie masuala ya caricature at this point. We'll start off with this one.
I like this one. State House on Wheels.
Daily Nation.
Kuna imefunguliwa pale juu State House. It's just moving around. But this is the old one. State House right now does not have this red roof.
Yeah.
So the cartoonist here anasema renovated all-purpose State House on wheels. Na jamaa ametokea pale juu anatumia megaphone. It is the same theme that we see on the cartoon on the People Daily. The president, a caricature of the president in his typical style on the roof of his car. Sema, I am not campaigning. This is our immediate problem. That's a ballot box. So the ballot box is more immediate than huyu mwananchi ako hapa chini ya kunjaa amemwekea sahani hivi anataka kitu. Lakini sisi tunazungumzia mambo ya ballot ya 2027 because that's more immediate for the country.
The Standard, so now they want to drop mathematics as a compulsory subject. And the commentator says a confirmation that you don't need numerical skills to steal funds. Interesting.
Utajuaje umeiba ngapi?
The Standard. This is the Star. Ruto must go where?
And I think this was the hardest, was the most consequential statement of this past weekend, when everyone has been chanting Ruto must go, but the former Prime Minister kuja anambia, so you've been saying Ruto must go. Aende wapi?
Kuna mtu kwa closet. Hizi ni nguo za nani kwa closet?
Nguo zake, you see, he kept on changing. When he was campaigning as Azimio leader, this was his uniform. Then he moved to AUC and he turned it into green. Nowadays he dresses in blue. Have you realized? He's always in blue. Ruto must go.
The Azimio color. Ruto endi. Raila anawaambia hivyo.
Raila amesema hakuna mahali anaenda.
All right. In the State of the Nation, Fred.
Yes. Kipruto Rapkirwa, former Agriculture Cabinet Minister in the Kibaki administration, will be in studio alongside Danson Mugatana, that's Senator Tana River, and Dr. Makali Mulu, MP Kitui Central, immediately after the break, to stand by for that conversation. Of course, at 8 a.m., Monday Blitz, all the latest weekend sports and analysis. Fred Arocho and Shatterboy will be in studio.
Later on, we're talking matters business, managing your small business remotely with digital systems. Patrick Muraguri will be here for that conversation. Meanwhile, interact with us on our social media platforms. TV47 Kenya on Facebook and YouTube, TV47 News KE. My handle is at Ann_Dida on X.
My handle is at Fred Indibuli.
Stay with us.
is changing every day, and so should we, for the better. Each week, we tackle the big why, the question that should be on everyone's minds. Why isn't this fixed yet? Deforestation, global warming, and the adverse effects of climate change. The future isn't just something that we inherit, it's something that we create. Join us on The Green Fix as we tell the stories of those who refuse to give up. When it comes to fixing the planet, there is no time to waste. Join me, Shiksha Aurora, on Thursdays at 9 p.m. on The Green Fix as we look into the big why, you and I.
For comprehensive information and education on your health, Body Garage is here.
Don't allow anyone to pluck out your good tooth, as long as it is strong and stable.
Cancer doesn't start today and you get the symptoms tomorrow. By the time you pick it or the time it is manifesting in you, probably will be there about 5 to 10 years.
The eye is the window to the rest of the body.
Don't forget to stay hydrated.
And of course, you at home do take your water.
So the ultimate test is actually you check your urine. Your urine should be clear.
Clear like the water?
Yes. Should be able to see the other side of the urine. If your urine is colored or has changed color, you cannot see the other side, then you have not taken enough water.
Don't forget regular health checkups. Early detection saves lives.
I want the message be, we can prevent cervical cancer. We prevent cervical cancer in several ways. You have young girls and even somebody who's above that age, you can pay at least every 3 years. Somebody should have a pap smear done.
If you are 40, 45, 50, going upwards, once a year, please go see a doctor. Yeah, it's just for normal routine maintenance.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate.
I come from Muranga, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister, where SK Macharia comes from, for the sake of SK Macharia, who has really wanted to see you become president. You can only become president if you run in 2027. Gachagua is ready to support you. If you support Ruto, you will have to play second fiddle. You will frustrate our Honorable SK Macharia. Support Rigathi, Kalonzo, and you will be president. Thank you very much.
Mimi tunajua mambo, kazi ya siasa sio kazi rahisi. Mimi nasema wanasiasa wanapropoka tu hapa na pale, lakini sio rahisi. Mtu ajitokeze aende kufanya kazi kwa wananchi. Sasa ndio maneno mengi zaidi SK amesema. Sitaki kuongeza mambo. SK amesema. Siku hizi naona huyo kijana wengine kutoka Muranga anasema tu ukitaka kuwa rais, kuwa na Gachagua na Kalonzo. Wewe vile nimetoka bwana. Poa kabisa. Nchi hii inaweza kuchomeka ikiwa kama watu hawajihadhari sana. Unajua hii demokrasia tunajenga katika taifa letu, tumetoka naye mbali. Zamani ilikuwa ukisema tu ngwe ndani. Ngwe ndani. Wakati ile ambaye simba alikuwa na meno na makucha. Hiyo simba tuling'oa meno, hata makucha tukakata. Sasa hiyo tuko na simba kibogoyo. haikuwa rahisi. Wakati ile ilikuwa kama umeonekana tu wewe ni mtu ambaye atafuati nyayo, unashikwa tu na mtu anaenda weka sahihi, waziri wa mambo ya usalama. Hiyo inatosha kuweka yeye jela Kamiti au Shimulatewa au Naivasha kwa miaka mingi zaidi. Kuna mambo ya mahakama. Siku hizi hata kuweka wewe kwenye remand ya polisi huwezi kuweka wewe zaidi ya masaa 48. Yale yote haikukuja kwa njia rahisi, imekuja kwa jasho na damu ya Wakenya, na tukuja mahali papo sisi tuko hapo. Sasa tulipolazimisha hao kukubali tuwe na mfumo wa siasa yenye vyama vingi, haikuwa rahisi. Tukawa na uchaguzi mwaka 92, mliona matokeo yake. Halafu ikaja ile ya 97, mliona matokeo yake. Hiyo 97, mimi na hakika kama hawange ongeza siku ambayo waliongeza kwa sababu ya mvua, tulisema na mvua, Kibaki alikuwa ameshinda. Kibaki ndiye alishinda hiyo uchaguzi. Uchaguzi ambayo imekuwa naitwa free and fair tangu tulete hii mfumo wa siasa yenye vyama vingi ni 2002. Hiyo peke yake. Hizi zingine zote unajua SK amwambia nyinyi, SK amwambia nyinyi. Kwa hivyo mimi usimwambie mimi nataka mimi nishinde. Nimeshashinda mara mingi. Sijatangazwa tu. Mimi najua mwaka juzi tulikuwa nasema fungeni 7. Sisi tufungeni 7. Maana tulikuwa najua ndani ya 7 kuna ukweli. Walifungua. Lakini muhimu ni kwamba Kenya ni mkubwa kushinda sisi zote. What's important is democracy is a project. It's not an instant coffee that you brew and drink at the same time. What is important that Kenya remains together. Hakuna haja ya kusema Raila asimame 1927 kama 27 hiyo Kenya itafika pale kama imechomeka. Kenyans need to live between now and 2027. It's now. Gharama ya maisha ni juu sana ya Wakenya. Wakenya wanaumia. Bei ya chakula iko juu, ushuru iko juu sana. Mambo hii ya ufisadi imepanda. Ndio sababu tukaweka ile mkataba, tumeweka 10-point agenda. Na hiyo 10-point agenda sio usalata. Wewe unataka tufanye namna gani? Kama kuna njia nyingine, unasema Ruto aende. Aende alafu nani ifanyike? Mbele pale Ruto aende aweke Gachagua. Sasa Ruto aende, Kindiki aende abaki pale. Baadaye Kindiki aende weke mtu mwingine. Hakuna haja. 2027 itafika. Lakini Wakenya wako na shida mpaka ya shida yatatuliwe sasa. Sio siku nyingine.
Yes, indeed. Ruto must go, but the question is where? Perhaps the most significant or far-reaching political statement coming from this weekend, and that's where we start our discussion this morning on State of the Nation, right here on Morning Cafe TV 47. My name is Fred Indemuli. Privileged to have with me in studio Kipruto Rapkirwa, who served as a member of the National Assembly, served as a cabinet minister in the Kibaki One administration. Wanakirwa, karibu sana.
Thank you.
Also with us this morning, Danson Mungatana, who has been a legislator for a long time, a member of the Pan-African Parliament, currently serving as Senator of Tana River. Karibu.
Thank you.
And Makali Mulu, MP Kitui Central for more than 2 terms.
Yeah, 3 terms.
3 terms, yes. Karibu sana Bwana Mulu to TV 47. Bwana Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister, is known to make very many statements which are considered momentous, probably critical in the political direction this country takes from the Kibaki Tosha and such like things, Nusumkate now. The hashtag Ruto must go has been trending for the past 6-7 months since June 2025. And with that one statement from that weekend, with the question, Ruto must go where, everything changes now, Bonakirwa, or not?
Well, there are a number of things that I do agree with former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. One of which is that elections have not been so free and fair, and somebody can verify the results of those elections in most of the elections that we've had in the past. And of course, it is easy to say the side that won played some kind of fall games. But I have a feeling that both sides, especially 2007, which is the watershed of many political games in Kenya. Yes, there was Tharaka Nithi. Yes, there was also Nyathike, where the constituency had over 100% turnout, as if after the registration was closed, nobody was hospitalized, nobody passed on, and therefore everybody was so prompt that they turned out. That we have a lot of misgivings, and as I've said before, in that particular election, ODM seemed to have done better because they were more organized and they had one candidate per constituency. We in the PNU, we had more votes in every constituency, but we did not get the seats. That is the difference, because there was more than one party calling itself supporting Kibaki but not supporting necessarily one candidate in that constituency. But more important is the need for us to have political hygiene. I think former Prime Minister is trying to justify the fact that he's in government at this particular time. And the reasons that he gives, some of them are outrageous, that the president was going to be overthrown by the military, something that has not been in our political language. We need to improve our political hygiene. Yes, there could have been a threat to the presidency at that time, but we cannot say it exclusively there was going to be an overthrow of government. Let's not encourage Kenyans to start thinking of the alternative ways of getting rid of a leader. Yes, even some of us, we did not support the fact that it looked like the president was almost being evicted from State House. But he's a politician, and therefore, being a politician, he must be ready that those of us who are not in government might be saying, yes, he must go out of State House in the next election. We are just building that momentum. So for Raila to tell us that we should not say Ruto must go is, to say the least, the height of political bad manners.
Yeah. Okay. Senator, all these statements come are probably delivered in a very casual manner about the sanctity of our electoral process, whether or not it's been working, whether or not it's been doctored over the years, in a very casual manner. Then it's left to statements by the former Prime Minister to give us political direction. Really, should we be listening to such individuals who say this and the other on any platform, but in a very casual manner, about very consequential processes for this country?
Well, I have always held a different opinion on how important communication should be done. I'm really uneasy about roadside declarations, for example, from the head of state, or even what you call significant political statements being made at funerals, in churches and whatever, and yet there are formal offices where you can actually have a considered opinion that you want to communicate to the nation or to your constituents, where you can call people and it's a written statement where you're able to discuss and answer questions from the fourth estate. I think that's the way that important political statements ought to be communicated. I have always thought that we don't do justice to our voters. When you are making a very significant statement, in a funeral setup, or in a church setup, or in a wedding, or even in a fundraiser where nobody can interrogate you. So now the fourth estate is left now to come and interrogate us as third parties, and we hazard what really it means. But having said that, I think that we need to give respect due to where it belongs. Age, wisdom, and all this, they matter in politics. There are some people who, just by the way they are talking on the floor of the House or even in public gathering, you can clearly see this one, he's still wet material. The mud has not, whatever, he's supposed to be shaped. And there are people, when they speak, even in various setups, you can see there is some experience, something that is speaking, that I can probably go with it more than the rushed, hurried, and whatever kind of speeches that people give in various functions. For instance, if I see Honorable Kirwa in a public function, I would want to hear what he's saying. And I know the manner he would deliver it would be different from maybe a first-timer or people who are excited with national politics. So I think we need to give it to Raila that he has been there. He has been there during the struggle, the dark days. He has been there in easier times, and he's still here with us. So when he speaks with that kind of, there's no hurry, there's no, and he's very historical. And if you see him, a lot of times when you see him talk, he's very historical. He's got, and I hope he writes books for all the things, his thoughts. I hope his people will put some biography around what he thinks. Because even AUC chairman, when he was in Addis Ababa, you would see his discussions are very historical. And it's good. Some people criticize it, say this is the past, it's not the future. But I think for us, we are benefiting from the fact that he's been in various epochs of time. As to whether we should take the direction that he gives us, or his thoughts, it's up to you and where your political inclination is, okay? There are those who are on the other side of the political divide during the campaigns with him. He has left, he has come on this side. So they treat him as opposition, and whatever he says, he'll oppose. And there are those of us who were opposing him, and when he's now on this side, we treat him as being on our side. But really, I think he is speaking like an old man. And old men don't have restrictions. They just tell you as it is. And old men also, they are like grandfathers. They are loved more than the parents, The children tend to want to hear more. What does grandfather say? Because grandfather is more fun. Grandfather allows a lot of whatever. So from what I see is that you may not agree with him, you may agree with him, but what you can't deny is that he's got political experience, he's got political gravitas, so you cannot ignore what he says. So I think that's...
But the political space that Raila Odinga occupies is a special one in the Kenyan context. The fact that any statement he makes is actually consequential enough to give direction politically. The young Kenyans have been saying Ruto must go. Your side of the political divide has been saying Ruto must go. When Raila was there, Raila actually led those chants. Now to go and ask the question, Ruto must go where? Where does that leave you, Bwana Mulu?
Okay, thank you, Fred. It's good to host us with my colleagues. For me, I would want to ask some fundamental questions relating to that statement. The question is this the first time Kenyans are saying a president must go? The answer is no. In the past, we have said Moi must go, we have said Kibaki must go. At one point, we were saying Uhuru must go. So Ruto must go is nothing new. It's only that we are saying where Kenyans expected those others to go is where Ruto should go. But another fundamental question is, why are Kenyans saying Ruto must go? Because it's just not a statement picked from the blues. It's a very well interrogated statement. First of all, if you look at what, and I want just to summarize as the SK Archbishop said yesterday, that Kenyans have problems which are really, making them feel like they don't belong to Kenya. When you look at all the things this Kenya Kwanza government promised, nothing seems to be working. All over the papers, we are saying Kenyans are really suffering. And when you look at the spread and intensity of Kenyans who are saying Ruto must go, it must be an issue of concern even to Raila, to Honorable Raila. Why? Because even those areas where we failed, they were the strongholds of Kenya Kwanza when we were casting our vote, seem to be in the same level of Ruto must go with areas which are in opposition. And that's why I will get very concerned when I see a leader of the stature of Honorable Raila asking where Ruto must go. In the past, never have we thought as a country that our country could be in the hands of the military. He's actually the first person who's starting to indicate to Kenyans that the military has a chance of taking the government. Kenyans never think of military rule. So this is what we are saying. From where I sit, I think what I'm seeing a Raila, Honorable Raila, who is trying to justify why he has joined Kenya Kwanza government against the wishes of majority of Kenyans. Because Kenyans have been saying, we have looked at you as our leader over the years. We have analyzed that and concluded that you are a champion of the rights of the weak, or the disadvantaged, or the minority, or the marginalized. But now where are we now today? It seems like you have deserted your key responsibility as our leader and gone to the other side, and you have gone to bed with the people we think are harassing us. And I think that's really what is now. I'm sure wherever he sleeps, he must be thinking about, how do I get myself out of this mix?
Is he trying too hard to do that, to convince people about, or to justify his move?
It is very hard. That's why you see he's struggling wherever he goes. Because even the young people like Senator, the new senator who has just been elected is telling him, we are concerned that you are on the wrong side of history. But all said and done, let's look at the issues. Kenyans are saying our economy is not doing well. We have no money in our pockets. Government is not giving capitation to school so that our children can be in school. Government doesn't be getting it right in issues of health through SHA and SHIP. Government doesn't seem to be getting it right in terms of education for our children at the university level because of the challenges of the new funding model. So there are quite a number of critical issues where Kenyans are saying, really, how we wish as the people who vote for you that things were different for us. But from where I come from, you know, in football we say, ile lugha ya mtaa, tunakuonea at 18. Meaning wherever you are, watu wamekuona, so you can't hide yourself. And where I come from, we say, what he's trying today to do is like hiding himself behind one piece of grass, which is so thin that even if you are to hide there, people will still be seeing you, and you assume people are not seeing you. I think what Honorable Raila needs to do is, we have accepted that he's supporting Honorable Ruto in Kenya Kwanza government. Can he just remain there and stop having excuses? Okay. With all due respect. We respect him a lot.
It's interesting that Raila Odinga, even when he makes these statements in support of President William Ruto, he also takes time to talk about the ills or the challenges or the misgivings he has about issues like SHA, university funding model, taxation measures. Yet we know we are actually very deep into the budget-making process, and nothing seems to be changing. Should we be taking some of these statements seriously when we know clearly nothing tangible has been done towards working out these issues, yet he still uses the same to justify his position?
I think Prime Minister Raila Odinga this time finds himself in a very awkward position. Awkward in the sense that the constituency that has hitherto supported him seems to be slipping away just because he has shown some approach more towards the current regime. And I think that is the conflict that he's trying to get out of. And of course, I know Raila, God giving him strength, is likely to be a candidate in the next election, and he does not know how to handle the whole situation because he seems to have gotten into some kind of arrangement that is making him a bit uncomfortable, but he seems to have committed himself to his colleague and friend and brother, William Ruto. So my worry is that Raila seems to be and it's not the first time. I said last week, and I still say again, the only time Raila has stayed on one side of the equation for 5 years is between 2013 and 2017, when he remained in the opposition fully. Because even when he was with us in government, midstream he ran away by opposing the government and therefore being removed or excluded from the cabinet after the referendum of 2005, and so forth. So I do not have to repeat what we've said before. And this therefore means Raila himself does not constitute the mind of a Democrat. For him, democracy is when it is convenient to him, and when it's not convenient to him, democracy is anathema that he finds it very hard to follow for the full period. And this is something I wish. This democracy is an import from the rest of the world. But because we have believed in Africa that is a better way of getting change of government, change of leadership from one group or from one set of leaders to the next, we need also to keep according to the rules. The rules that obtain as insofar as democracy is concerned is that if you are on one side of the equation, for heaven's sake, keep to the lane until the 5-year period is over. Then you can also invite yourself either to join the government or to remain in the opposition, because even in the opposition, it's still a respectable position that you can make a contribution, you can support the government of the day from the opposition benches without necessarily scuttling the processes. And when you say something is not right, it should not be taken that you are saying it because you are on that side of the equation. You are saying it because you are a Kenyan and you believe things can be done better. And this is the way I feel we have failed to accept that when you go for elections, the results are two. You either win or you don't win. And the Honorable Mungatana is one of the best examples. He has won many times, he has lost, but he has not been discouraged. He still knows, when I lose, it's still a game. When I win, it's still a game. So this is the way we should inculcate in our people, that yes, the opposition is part of government. Okay. And the government cannot be seen to be so confused as to fail us to know who is in the opposition and who is in government. Of course, nowadays we call majority or minority, but in the minds of Kenyans, if you are not on the side of the president, you are in the opposition. So Raila cannot pretend today that he wants to play the role of the opposition and is fully in government. It's only he who has not joined government. When you are chairman, you are two deputy party leaders, and many other leaders in your own arrangement are already singing the language of the government, you are fully in government.
Okay. Yet for close to 30 years or so, we've really dependent on Raila's direction politically in Kenya. From when Daniel Moi was still there, it was Raila who actually was the main impetus towards the election of Mwai Kibaki by saying Kibaki Tosha in 2002. 30 years later, Raila Odinga must be feeling that he has carried the burden for this country for too long. Are we wrong in still insisting on depending on him for political direction going forward, even with the kind of conflicting statements that he's now giving us?
Those who have worked with Raila closely, they know him. Those who have been in the struggle with him before, they know him. So even when you are running, he's your candidate for president, you know the person you're dealing with. We don't need to explain all that history because you saw it happening in your own eyes. You saw him doing the decisions he made. And I mean, they saw him do all this stuff before. So I don't know what is the issue with those who are crying. It's like telling someone, you must stay in this house, and I don't want to stay in the house. You know, if I feel that the other side of the coin is going to better serve my interests, or the interests of my followers, or whatever interest I want, I'm in a position to make my own decision. Why is it that you're making me do what you... Why can't you yourself be the leaders of the opposition? Or why don't you want to go and march in the streets and all that? Why is it that it has to be Raila? I mean, it's also not fair. But if you accept that he is the leader, then you accept the full package, that sometimes he will make a decision that is against you. But I want to say this in the defense of Honorable Raila. If you read the book by Nelson Mandela, the autobiography, not biography, but the one he wrote himself, he said, during the negotiations for independence now, the new South Africa, he had to go alone to go and meet Peter Botha, the then Prime Minister. He had to go alone to make very critical decisions against the guys whom they were jailed together in Robben Island. And there's a point he made in that book, and you should read it if you are a student of politics, that sometimes a leader needs to be able to take a decision that is good for the greater good, but may not serve the immediate interests of the comrades with whom he is in the trenches with. And I think the Right Honorable former Prime Minister has done that on several occasions. Because Mandela explains that when the message came to me that I must go and meet what were then my enemies, quote unquote, I knew that if I shared this with colleagues like Walter Sisulu and the other colleagues whom were in Robben Island together, it would have been impossible for me to move and have a meeting. But I knew that I had greater responsibility for our nation. And so I went and made the decisions. And indeed, some of the people were very unhappy. Some of the people did not like the fact that Mandela agreed to serve in an interim government as a deputy president under Peter Botha for 2 years. They didn't like that. And when Mandela got elected, now in the new free democratic South Africa, some of them were shocked that Mandela retained the very secretary of the former president as a white woman, who was something unthinkable. You know, that you go and, we are supposed to be, it's supposed to be black South Africa now, but he was ahead of his time. So sometimes as a leader, you have to make a decision that is not necessarily pleasing to the comrades who are with you, but for the greater good, it serves your nation or the greater causes. And I've given an example of Mandela, but even our own nation, when Jomo Kenyatta was making some of those agreements, you know that our history tells us people like Bildad Kagia were very much against the idea that the British government was to give us money as a loan to pay for the land the colonialists had taken from us, to compensate the British nationals so that they can live. Some people thought, what is this? We have fought for this land. We have this. But Kenyatta had to step aside from his own colleagues to make that decision. Now, Some of them still were very bitter against him, even after independence. Some of the Mau people remained in the forest, said the struggle is not over. Now, when you translocate that whole idea of stepping aside from your own comrade cycle, you would see Raila is in that category. When he went ahead and said, Kibaki Tosha, it was against what other people were calling a big betrayal, because they had some agreement with Akina Nyachaya and so on. But he went from this meeting and went and announced, and Kenya got a new dispensation. You see, so sometimes it is you know, your shoulders carry, you know, God chooses you to carry the epoch of history on your shoulders. Not that you are any special, but because maybe it is upon you.
And hence the question, are we depending too much on Raila Odinga? But do you agree with that kind of comparison? That Nelson Mandela, Jomo Kenyatta, Raila Odinga has done this several times. Is it always for the good of this country?
You know, really, from where I sit, I have no problem with Raila joining Kenya Kwanza, because it is his democratic right. After considering quite a number of factors. But I have a problem with the confusion which has come up as a result of that movement, because it's not coming out clear. Where is the confusion coming from? The confusion is coming from an area where you are saying, as a party, we have no coalition agreement with Kenya Kwanza. On that note, you want to claim to be the minority leader. But at the same time, you have your soldiers right in the Kenya Kwanza government and in the parliamentary committees, which should be taken by the majority side. So what is happening is, in terms of our democracy, there's so much confusion. For example, I want to give you a very good example now. The chair of PAC now is a member of ODM. And that chair of PAC is supposed to be leading in looking at Outer General's reports for the ministries. Mm-hmm. One of those ministries, or four of those ministries, the CSEs are people from the same party. So do you think, even in terms of morality, does that chair have the moral authority to question those reports in an objective manner? And in case he questions and he gets a call for from the party leader, who we know, and he's told, please, for those cases, don't forget about them, what happens? So we are saying we have no problem, but I think really, if he has decided to move, can he then pave way clearly that my party has joined the government? On that case, all watchdog committees should be taken over by people who remained in the minority, so that in that case, we grow our democracy and improve our oversight as parliament. Now, the other thing is, and this is a question I've been asking, and I'm surprised that my good friend Senator Mungatana, because you've done so many shows with him, today he's defending Raila. Mm-hmm. Many times he has been the other side, trying to do what is expected of him. So for me, I think we need consistency. Yeah. Raila has been my good leader for many years, and I'm sure I've been supporting him. But this one, I must say, this one I don't agree with him. And basically because I see a situation whereby he's sending the wrong signals to the country. The wrong signals. That people are saying we have a problem. If he decides to join the government as he has done, we have no problem. Let him join 100% and say, I belong to this government, and you guys can take the opposition and run with it, so that we don't have that confusion. But like now you're saying, you saw what United said the other day. The reason why parties are formed is to take government. Mm-hmm. So 2027, they will be working hard to take the government. It's like telling us 2027, Raila will now be out of Kenya Kwanza, back to contest for president. Another thing you should be worrying Kenya Kwanza a lot. You remember when he joined KANU and walked out of KANU, he walked out of KANU with more members than he joined. Mm-hmm. In that case, KANU became a shell. I don't know whether that will happen to Canada.
Do you want me to answer that?
These are the issues. I want us to move on to...
These are the issues, Fred.
But I'll give you a very...
These are the
issues. Let me just say this, that we are also students of history, and we know who we are dealing with. And my friend He's with us and he can move, he can support us. We are prepared. Our house is prepared. I mean, UDA is not joking. Next month, we are having a cohort of 10 counties doing their general party elections, grassroots elections. And Tana River is one of those that will be, and we are, I've just come back from home and we are preparing. And I'm telling you, we are preparing because we know we have a candidate. So whatever arrangements we are going to have, we as a political party have a plan. Okay. And we are going to deliver on that.
Whichever way Raila Odinga decides to go.
It's because we are not predicated on him.
I want us to move the discussion now to the crux of the matter, where the rubber meets the road. And it's on both the main dailies today. On the Daily Nation, how jobs and pay crisis hit families. On the front page of the Standard, road tax tyranny, because discussions around taxation have come back. And listening to Raila Odinga, he talked about it and he said Kenya's already overtaxed. As he says, Ruto must go, but where? He is still talking about taxation and the fact that it is hurting Kenyans. Let's focus a bit on the Standard. The government's plans to introduce road tolls that could generate up to 4.8 trillion shillings, but at what cost? Critics say it's another financial strain on Kenyans, benefiting private firms while raising transport costs. Those things we need to note, that the management of this fund is going to be private, the same way we've complained about SHA, the same way we talk about e-citizen. Yes? And Kenyans are already strained. Right now, the person heading Treasury is a former chairman of ODM party. The person in charge or chairing the Budget and Appropriations Committee is a member of ODM party. When Raila Odinga talks about taxation on one hand being a problem, his people are running the budget-making process. Do you get the conflicting or confusion that we've been talking about when Raila makes these statements?
Well, indeed, Fred, I do want to declare that Raila is a lucky politician. He's been able to do so many things that many of us who have been on this political space for quite some time suspect him of some mischief or personal agenda in what he does. And this is not something that we should be worried about. And I would want to disabuse anybody that we are crying that Raila must come back to us. We are ready also to mount a campaign that is not only organized but also focused on issues such as issues of taxation. The measures that Kenya Kwanza has put on its own agenda is, to say the least, destructive to the very economy that we are dealing with. As we are today, the amount of tax insofar as motor vehicle industry is concerned is higher than 52% for every liter of fuel that you consume. This therefore means inbuilt in the cost of fuel that we know today is 52% goes to tax. And that is the reason why the road license was removed as one of the components that is required for motor vehicles. Now, if you will be bringing these tolls, and remember in the 80s and early 90s, we had also toll stations like between here and Kitale. I think we had two, one in Gilgil and the other one near Timboroa. And those toll stations were removed and everything was incorporated and put into the fuel. Now, when you are bringing them back and telling us that you are also going to tax me through the insurance of the car, you are going to tax me through toll stations, and all these things are going to be managed by private firms, whose firms are likely to be geared towards those in the government of the day. This therefore means that this government has become a regime that is doing business, pretending to be running the politics, and yet among themselves, they are the business dealers. As you said earlier, issues of insurance, issues of SHI and SHA, all that are being managed by private firms. It is clear some of the individuals are known to be people close to the powers that be. And if we are going to make government a private enterprise, let us be clear that for every time you're in government, you're just going to assist yourself to a loot, and you are going to deal with the coffers of the nation as if they were kiosks organized outside your house. It is something that we must tell the regime of the day or any other person who will be in government tomorrow, that let us separate what belongs to government as part of the public.
Okay.
Because you see, the democracy that we are talking about, and at times people unfairly compare the current regime with President Moi. President Moi was operating under a different constitution. He was operating under different environment. That was the time of the Cold War. But today, we are operating under a robust constitution, a constitution that enhances democracy. And you know, democracy is not just democracy unless you are given a chance to participate in the decision of the government. And it's not just mere decision-making participation. It must be informed participation on clear parameters. But today, we talk of public participation as if the president on the rooftop of a car involving the public in the rallies is public participation. It is something that we must rethink, not because of the Kenya Kwanza regime, because these bad manners, if it is not removed from our midst, we are going to destroy this country.
Okay. The issue of overtaxation does not seem to go away since last year with the rejection of the finance bill. One of the provisions of that finance bill, one of the proposals therein was a proposal to have taxation on insurance premiums for motor vehicles. That has found its way back through this road toll policy that is already being discussed. If you look at the dailies today, 3 of them, the Stars goes with KRA, goes for small traders, matters taxation, road tax tyranny, and how jobs and pay crisis hit families. Of course, talking about the housing levy and the SHE and SHA deductions. This is definitely the conversation of the times. The fact that the budget-making process has already progressed to a point where it is now towards the tail end. We hear Raila Odinga talking about the same thing about taxation. Are we having the correct conversation, generally, not just politicians, as a nation, about taxation?
Well, from where I sit, first of all, I want to appreciate and accept that taxation burden is heavy on all of us, especially those who are on the pay slip. That is not a question that we should even debate. And I appreciate the fact that our colleagues who are in the minority side of our government, because there's no opposition in Kenya now, the minority side is putting a lot of argument, okay? Some of it may be populist, because when you just criticize and then you don't give a solution, then you are just doing populist politics. But some of the people are also trying to give some possible way forward. But Fred, I want you to look at this situation. When they are discussing this issue of the road tax, because that is where we are, the policy, the facts that are on the table is that we have like a 500 billion hole for maintenance. And they don't seem, the Treasury does not seem to have another way of raising that money except to propose this. And this is a proposal they have put on the table. So we are proposing that we increase, we put the road tax for everybody who is using the road so that they are able to pay as they are using that road. Now, it's in simple terms, we want to maintain this road so that it doesn't have the potholes and breaks your car and whatever, by pay 100 shillings or pay 150 shillings for you to pass through this road. Everybody. Now, every time you try to make a proposal like this, it's obviously going to meet resistance. Everybody says no, because nobody wants to remove any money and pay. But Fred, I want you to just be practical. Let's just be practical. Say you own a matatu, or you own a bus, or you own a public service vehicle, a taxi. Now, the person who drives a taxi service is expected to pay tax from income. Now, he could be earning much more than an SEC, or what we used to call a DO, yeah? But the DO has no escape route. The DO must pay, because the salary comes and it is cut up front, even before he sees it, you know? So that is the office guy who is really burdened. Then we have the guy who is operating the taxi, who is earning maybe 3 times what the DO is earning. Only that he doesn't wear a tie, he doesn't wear... These are the realities. I'm telling you what happens in business. Now, KRA says, file your tax returns. He files that, oh, he has bought spares, he has done what? So he's filing losses if he files. And then his taxable income becomes negligible. So technically, the DO is using that same route, and the taxi driver is using that same route, but in reality, the DO is paying, the taxi driver is not paying, you know. So this whole unfairness about the fact that there are very few people, Fred, and you and me know, that are carrying the tax burden.
Interesting.
Very few people.
Very few people.
Majority of Kenyans, majority of them, they don't pay taxes. And any time KRA starts going, oh, small traders, we come, you need to pay. No. We are already paying to the county government. Oh, what. They do not want to be touched. And what happens in reality is that government withdraws, because government is a political government. So everybody wants, who let's say is coming into government, we say, I will not tax. And the people who are in government will say, we will not want to raise any more taxes. Okay, you remember this campaign of Read My Lips by Bush, the American president, I will not raise taxes, read my lips. And then the reality came that he had to raise taxes, and you know, he was voted out by the electorate. But the next guy who came still imposed taxes. So what am I saying? I'm saying, let us have a conversation. And that conversation, I wish, would be less political and real honest.
Okay.
And this honest conversation, Fred, that I'm talking about, Kenyans listening to me, is to bring a guy, a chief, or an accountant working in government, or an HR personnel working in government, and a person who is selling fruits. Now, you see, one of the most shocking things, there was a time I was doing a claim as a lawyer, and a fruit vendor's kiosk had been hit by a car, and we were trying to tabulate the costs so that we can make a proper claim. The kind of returns that he was making, he's a fruit vendor, they were impossible, and that is in those days, you know, comparable to a very high-ranking person working in the office, comparable to many lawyers who were junior lawyers at that time. So I want to say, are we really being honest as Kenyans?
Are we having the correct conversation?
Are we having the correct conversation? Because sometimes it's so clouded with politics. Like people will come up and say, no, he's eating our whatever. And that conversation, Fred, let me just vacate by saying this. Let me finish my point by saying this. That conversation, for it to be truly honest, government must also tell us, this money, how are you using it?
Okay.
Because you know, in some countries, people are paying 50% of the money, but they don't complain because they can see what is happening. So there's both sides of that conversation that must be had.
I'll draw your attention to a story on page 8 of The Nation. It talks about how big fish are evading 7 billion shillings in taxes as KRA hits hustlers hard. And on that list includes Kitui County, was over 1 billion shillings in withholding VAT and withholding income tax payee. We also have the Parliamentary Service Commission that has deducted payee but yet to remit over 1 billion shillings to KRA. All this, if you look at it, amounts to about 7 billion shillings. It may look negligible in the larger scheme of things, but definitely there's a skewed way in how we handle taxation in Kenya. We have overburdened a very few people, yet we continue politicizing the issue. Are we having the correct conversation, even as we approach the tail end of this budget-making process?
Yeah, thank you, Fred. Maybe before I come to that, let me just comment on this issue of the road toll, the tolling of our roads, and say this. The justification for collecting this 4.8 trillion makes a lot of sense. That we need money to improve our roads. And the challenges we are facing is because the fuel levy and the road charges we are collecting are not enough to meet the needs of our roads. So on that basis, they are saying there could be need to think of an alternative way of collecting more revenue to do our roads. But there are about 3 issues which I would want to raise. One of them is, when you talk about tolling of our roads, and you say that will be managed by private firms, and it will go to a national fund, tolling fund, which is not managed through the consolidated fund, then there are questions of accountability, which you must answer. The other important question is, when you say you are going to collect that money through tolling, and then at the same time, in case someone doesn't meet pay the levies, instead of the court process coming in to justify how much you should pay, is the same private firm which is supposed to recover the money from the person, another important gap which we see. And the third one, which is critical for Kenyans. In the past, we have complained many times that issues of equity, Kenyans are paying levies and charges, fuel levy and road charges. But at the end of the day, there is so much skewness in terms of where the roads are being done. If you were to get all the roads in Kenya, which have been tarmacked, and get roads which are getting graded, and put them on the Kenyan map so that you can see the picture, you realize that there are a lot of biasness in terms of roads. The other day you saw there was a serious argument where some counties are getting billions of shillings to do roads, while other counties, including Mugatana's and mine, are getting less than 100 million in a year. So we must address that issue of equity. If we are to collect this 4.8 trillion, as Kenyans, are we assured that the money will be spread equitably to all the counties? Or is it a matter of where we all participate in paying, but when it is coming where to be spent, then we have an issue? And I think, to me, that's a very critical issue we must address as a country. And that's why now I want to tie that with what we are saying, the taxes. That in a situation where we are all paying taxes as Kenyans, and more so, the salaried Kenyans are really having a serious problem. And then when it comes down to making sure that, when KRA should be making sure that everybody pays their due share of tax, you find some people have not paid 7 billion. And the small person who is working in the cleaner in a ministry, who earns hardly 20,000 shillings, that the tax component is deducted even before they see their payslip, is unfairness of the highest order. So we need to get a system whereby taxation is not optional. And I've said many times, taxation is actually a good evil, because it is an evil that it hits on your payslip, but if it's used well, it will give you good roads, it will give you good health in terms of health facilities and services, it will give you good education in our country because you finance through that. But when it is misused, that's where you have problems. And that's why we are saying, as Kenyans, we are paying tax to a level that we think what we are paying, we are not getting value for money. In other countries, taxation is as high as 70%. But they never complain, because if I were to pay 70% of my salary, Fred, And I only need to wake up in the morning. My children will go to school without being asked for a cent. I'll go to hospital, be treated without being asked for a cent. The roads are smooth because they are done well. Why would I complain? The 30% would be good enough for me to do other small things.
Correct.
But the worst is a situation where we are collecting almost over 50% of our salaries, and we are hardly getting 10% of the expected services. That can't be fair to Kenyans.
All right.
And that's what we are saying, really. Can we streamline our tax procedures so that at the end of the day, we get people paying their taxes in time, and then after collecting the taxes, then government uses that tax in an equitable way so that Kenyans feel we are getting value for the money we are paying to the government.
Okay, but there seems to be a disconnect now. The collection of taxes, KRA is doing its work, and once it's deducted from your payslip, you have very little to do with that. But when it comes to what you're raising, the fact that how does government spend this money, how does even Parliament oversight how the budget is allocated and the resultant effect, that's where the questions come in.
Yeah.
We don't seem to be given an opportunity to talk about how much taxes we should pay. Why should the government then have the leeway and a blank check to do whatever it wants with the money?
Yeah, that's where the question is. The question is, can we be honest from the beginning to the end, in the sense that, yes, you take away my part of my money, and you don't give me commensurate service for the money that you've taken away. Number two, the display of affluence or whatever, and the pilferage that we know takes place every day is also another question that we need to engage in. How do you take away money from me? Then I realize that you are not making that money serve the purpose under which you took away that money. Coupled with that is the issue that this regime and the immediate former regime, they seem to be specializing in having some kind of money being wrecked into the system that does not go through the normal parliamentary approval or appropriation. It is dangerous for us on one side to say we are dealing with issues of the Constitution, and yet you are not allowing the relevant institutions to serve the country, in the sense that apart from this money now that it's going to be managed by private firms, how are these firms going to be procured? Who are the people who are going to be responsible? Are we going to have some kind of what you call declaration of interest, so that anybody in government should not necessarily be involved in the private enterprise that is taking place? And finally, we need also to ask ourselves, how do we allow multiplicity of tax collection? You are collecting from levy, you are collecting from VAT, you are collecting again from the tolls, you are also collecting from other ways, in a way that this becomes a tax, a regime that is only obsessed with taking away money from individuals at the expense of their normal life. So these are some of the questions that we need to engage in, and also accept that Kenyans would appreciate if you take away money from me and you make it useful for the purposes of me seeing immediate returns.
Yes. There are issues around the university funding model. Families are unable to take their children to school. SHA, of course, the challenges are obvious and they're yet to be resolved. There's a housing levy, which does not guarantee anyone that they're going to get a house after that. Then these toll fees that we are not even sure will be used for the right purpose. Isn't this gap we're talking about supposed to be filled by the houses of legislation, which you represent? The budget-making process is a function of the National Assembly, yes, but I know even the Senate is involved to a huge extent. Are we not saying that it is the houses of legislation that are failing us as a gap between tax collection and actually how the money is spent, in as far as oversight is concerned, Senator?
Let me just say that I hold a different opinion. The budget making process starts almost immediately after the previous budget is passed, and it originates from the Treasury. I'm telling you, members of the National Assembly, where I used to sit many years ago, they have little interaction with that until the laws, even they had to pass a law to insist that a budget policy paper must be brought first before the estimates are brought. Okay? So in our time, I'm not talking about now, what used to happen, there was no budget policy paper. There used to be a ceremony, minister comes, the books are brought, the estimates are brought maybe a day before. They are like this. And throughout the year, the processes have been going on within the ministry. And the ministries are normally divided into sectors, like maybe health and social sector, justice and security, whatever sectors. And they come up with combined sector proposals, which is called the wish list. And that wish list now, they now try to moderate it in accordance with the administration's priorities. Yeah? So all this time, legislators are not involved. It is the administration that is fully in charge of that process. So I would say that there is a certain improvement, because nowadays the law demands that the budget, the BPS must be, but the budget policy paper must be brought earlier on, so that we have these discussions which are ongoing now, so that Kenyans can hear what is going to be allocated where, what is the policy behind it, why should we expect this, what is the policy behind that policy of road tax, and things like that. But I want to say this, and I say it with a very heavy heart, that we have not had financial discipline. And the attitude for many people who have gone into government has not been to go and serve or to do equitable sharing or manage the resources. A lot of people have had that desire to go into government and hold the reins of power, control treasury and government, so that they can benefit themselves. And it has been like a tradition. That's why somebody wrote a book about "It's Our Time to Eat," which is a very shady and horrible attitude towards government. We should evolve to the point where people reject government positions, right? Because it is paying me less than what, I don't want to be a cabinet secretary because where I'm working, I'm making more money. I don't have a calling to serve government. Or I will do this first term, next term, I don't want, because I want to make money. I remember one cabinet secretary telling Obama, my kids now are going to college, and I need to work in the private sector to generate money. I've done my 4 years with you. I don't want to be appointed for the next 4 years. Because we should have that attitude that when we are coming into government, we are coming to serve. And this is a deficit. And this is why it pains me that we don't have that critical mass that says we are going to do the right thing for our people, irrespective. And you see, this is
Senator,
what...
Aren't you exonerating the...
I'm not exonerating.
...houses of legislation,
I'm not
surely, in their oversight role?
No, I'm not exonerating. I'm saying that in terms of interaction with the budget-making process, it is not a very big place. It has improved because now there's a requirement of the BPS to be brought. But still the time is not what would be enough for us to really interrogate. Now let me make a point here before I yield the mic. I wanted to say, America used to be a colony of the British Kingdom. In 1773, the people in Boston, Massachusetts state, the state of Massachusetts, they said, we will not accept taxation. There'll be no taxation without representation. The British government was giving laws that were not helping the merchants in Boston to develop. They were killing business. So these guys said, we will resist
And actually the War of Independence in America started from the question of taxation, where people were feeling...
Vis-a-vis representation.
Representation. What is this money? We are taking this money to UK.
Same argument. It's a house of
and I want to say
this.
I wanted to say this. The people rejected that taxation at that time. The people started the revolution and the War of Independence. And if you are a reader of American history, you know all those generals, and until Washington became president. They started from a resistance. They're saying this money, tunalipa, inaenda wapi? Those were the questions. And then when they got their independence, they formed a government. Still those questions are there today in America. So it's not an issue that we can just resolve, but we need to have honest conversations about where does our money go and what does it do.
Shouldn't those answers be coming to us from the National Assembly especially? Bwana Mwakali Mulu, you've had an opportunity to serve in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And I'm thinking, that is where the crux of the matter is. We should be asking, you should be filling that gap.
Let me say this. Our 2010 Constitution clearly states that Parliament has a very big role to play in budget making. And that's why the budget policy statement comes to Parliament. That normally would be discussing high-level policy issues, strategy issues, telling you from the government thinking this is where most of the resources should go. And then that's followed up by the annual estimates, where now you get to the details of the budget. But the challenge is, theoretically, Parliament should actually be doing the budget 100%. But practically, that has not been possible. Why has it not been possible? The budget you get from the executive, at times, when you look at the Public Finance Management Act, you realize that as a house, you're only given a small room in case of change. You might change not more than 1% of the total budget. Reorganize, not even changing, reorganize. So you find, even though the Constitution gives you a lot of authority, practically, you have those challenges. The other challenge which we have.
Are you saying the Constitution is impractical? Or is
no, it's very practical, but it's a implementation which has not been done as it should be.
It's a weakness of the House.
Of the House. Okay. And why is it a weakness of it? And these are the governance issues we don't seem to be picking in this country. One of the things is, if you look at the way the committees of parliament should be constituted, always the majority should be having more members than the minority in the committee. The majority procedure normally would be representing the government interests. That is, the majority are from the ruling party, which normally would be now the government, forming the executive. So you know, there's a scheming whereby all the way from the executive to the majority side, it's like they have agreed this is going to be our budget. So even when it comes to the House and you want to oppose that position, you always lose because of the voting requirement that decisions in the House are made through voting. So you don't have a lot of room to maneuver. And then things are made worse, where you go to a parliamentary group meeting, and then from that parliamentary group meeting, which is normally held at the House at the Hill, you know where it is held, you are told Mongatana will be the chair of this committee, Honorable Okiro will be the chair of this committee. It's like members don't have that free hand to say who's going to chair the committees. So it's just an arrangement whereby at the end of the day, you might want to change the budget, but you don't do much. The other thing you have seen, and I've been in that house for long now, I want to just take an example. I wish you could look at what happened this week. This week we are doing the supplementary budget. Immediately we said now we are getting the Committee of Supplies. Committee of Supplies is now where you put money to specific departments. You know how much goes to water, how much goes to agriculture, how much goes to health. The House was at about 60 members because we were discussing which was of interest to the government. So there was a serious mobilization to get that thing passed. Immediately we go to the point of House of Supplies. That House remained with less than 5 members. I was among the 5.
So could I be right to say that is where the problem lies?
Exactly.
That is a disconnect between
So you see, when it comes to critical decision making, where you require presence of members, then the members are not there. And later, I'm telling you, next week, you hear people saying, our area has not been given money, our area has not been given money. We have the opportunity to look at the budget and say where money is. So these are the challenges we are facing. And basically, as we are saying, at the end of the day, there's a likelihood that whatever budget goes through the House is what the executive has proposed to the House.
That leaving the executive to do whatever it does or wants to do with our money that it has collected already. Yeah. Do you agree that perhaps Parliament is the weakest link, and probably that's where we have a gap between taxation and the services?
Well, I do not want to entirely blame members of Parliament. I think the issue is emasculation of institutions by the current regime and previous regimes, where people don't believe in separation of powers. Remember, even the so-called majority is a product of calculations by the current president. Kenya Kwanza did not have majority at the beginning of time, and that has actually been fortified by a ruling by a court of law. And therefore, there is what I call institutional morass, where people don't seem to want to act independent of the executive, because the executive has become an overbearing institution where the legislature, the judiciary, seem to be subservient to that. And it is a cyclic thing that has happened since independence. It is only the short period of Kibaki 1 to a certain extent and Kibaki 2 that there was a bit of now separation of powers, such that even the judiciary was almost overbearing on the executive. But nonetheless, there was some semblance of separation of powers. But today, it would be even better if it was the entire executive. But it is just one man show at the hill that will carry the day. Because as he has said himself, at some stage, he was the main guy who does the praying, he prosecutes the papers, then he does the closing prayer, and the cabinet meeting is over. These are some of the challenges that we face as a nation.
All right, meanwhile, jobs and pay crises have hit families, shrinking pay for employees and job cuts have hit families hard as purchasing power for households has declined in recent years. Now, this is according to a parliamentary committee report. Households will plunge into further financial distress owing to harsh policies like the skewed methods being applied to determine what families pay for university education and a state-run medical scheme that has seen some unfairly slapped with higher rates. Matters taxation coming to the fore, and you can see when 3 dailies talk about taxes, then this is a conversation that we'll be having going forward, especially as we get to the tail end of the budget-making process. Finance Bill inakuja 2025. Do stand by for that. I want us to finish with a totally different story, I think the most political one, and this has to do with the churches. We have this story where Archbishop Ole Sapit denied the former deputy president an opportunity to speak in church yesterday. Let's play that story as we make our final comments.
Welcome you, our Father in God, Bishop. For weeks, the pulpit in the country has been the platform for weaving political rhetoric in a bid to reclaim the sanctuary from the tempests of politics. Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit has banned politicians from across the political divide from the Anglican church pulpit.
From today on henceforth, in any Anglican congregation, and I thank God my bishops are here, there will be no opportunity for any political leader to have a speech in the church.
Sapit was speaking during the consecration of the third bishop of SEK Nairobi Diocese, Jonathan Kabiru, in Makadara today. And politicians in attendance were not spared.
We will mention their names, they will wave their hands, and if they so wish to speak to the congregants, it will be done outside of the sanctuary. And not only today, but in all our dioceses and in all our churches.
Former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja, amongst others, were only recognized and asked to stand and wave to congregants.
Gachagua is with us. We have the Governor of Nairobi City County, His Excellency Sakaja is with us. Asante sana.
Also, Sapit has announced that offerings will no longer be publicly disclosed in any Anglican church across the country.
Giving in the Anglican Church will not be announced. Just give as God directs you to give. For what we give to God, we don't have to tell human beings what we have given him.
This coming in the wake of public outrage over the transparency of donations made to the church. Sheila Chelangat, Runinga ya TV 47.
All right, we have about 8 minutes or so 2.5 minutes each for your final comments. But this probably should be the way to go, Senator.
I fully support. I have a lot of respect for Archbishop Sapit, who has come to Tana River not once, not twice, and is very firm on his stand. I struggle myself with the fact that every Sunday you would see not the sermon. I remember those days of Akina Bishop Okulu, the late. You would hear a sermon, maybe there's some, as he's talking, is relevant to the political climate at the time, so you would know what he's saying. But you would not see politicians coming up to the pulpit and saying things. I struggle myself as a believer to do that. But there's also this thing of people want to hear you say something. So it's between that, a balancing between the two. That you can go into a congregation, especially where you have been elected. People want to hear you. And at the same time, there is the fact that this is a sanctuary where people have come to worship. So what I used to see former president, I think for a long time, Mo used to get outside the house, I mean the church, and say what he has to say. And I think if that could be the modus operandi, not just for the Anglican Church, but for everybody else, it would be better, because sometimes what you want to say may not be, maybe you are politicians from different, poolings, and then you say this, there's cheering, and the whole atmosphere changes from godly submission into a political, you've seen even in that clip, mentioning political figures, there's cheering. And it spoils that sanctity of the church. So I fully support that idea that if we wish, we either arrange our own meetings, or if we come out from the church and people want to listen to us, we say one or two things and be, but not to spoil the atmosphere of
giving
worship.
In church?
Giving in church, I think as the correct thing should be you keep quiet about it. The correct thing, you keep quiet about it. But I hesitate about matters of faith, Fred, because there are some people who are told you will go and you will give this, yeah, and it's a public thing. Let me give the example of Abraham. He was told you are going to sacrifice your child, so you don't know what that person and his God have discussed on those matters. Okay. Should it be public? Should it not be public? Those are matters of faith. So I don't like to really, but the general consensus should be you should keep quiet as much as possible.
Okay. Bwana Makali, will you go next?
I think I agree with the bishop in terms of making political statements at the pulpit, and even that's what I know. Even when I go to my local church, I actually hardly talk. I just go as a believer. I sit there, listen to the word of God, and separate and go out. But what we are saying is that could this be everywhere? Because the unfortunate bit is today we see him saying that, and tomorrow then we see people still address people in the same church, it will be unfortunate. But if it becomes a general practice that let's go to church, worship, and step out of church. You want to make political statements, we can make them out there, because political statements are normally not the same statements like what we are in church. That one I agree. In terms of giving, the same story, the Bible is very clear. Whatever you give, actually the analogy of the Bible is even more serious, because they are saying what the right hand gives, the left hand should not even know. You imagine, you are the same person. The Bible is proposing that. It's saying that what I'm giving with my right hand, the left hand should not know, which means if my two hands not even know what I'm giving, not even another individual. So we should be giving quietly, because you know your relation with God, because at times you want to do thanksgiving, at times you want to give your tithe, at times you want to give your offering, and you're giving to your God, really. So in that case, I totally agree. But also at the same time, I think we need to think about then, when you call politicians to come and do fundraising for the same church, what happens? To me, these are the critical questions. You can't be saying you don't want politicians to talk in church, and when it comes to fundraising, you want them to come in there and be the front line in terms of fundraising. So these are the issues we must balance. Otherwise, if you want me when I'm worshiping and don't want me when I'm fundraising as a politician, then that's a different matter.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, Kirwa, you wrap it up for us on this issue of church, the push and pull.
Yeah.
It's been quite, and you know, it's being led by the president himself.
Yeah.
The reason why we're discussing this is because of the president's actions.
So, yeah, but on a lighter note, you know, I'd written President Moi. I wanted to use him as an example, but I think Mungatana must have looked at my notes and picked it from there. But on a more serious note, I do agree with the bishop that that's the right way. But I also want to urge politicians that in the same message of President Moi, even when he was addressing the people outside the church, he never engaged on serious political issues. He was able to spend more time talking about family matters, about issues of faith and so forth. So that kind of discipline is what is lacking among us politicians. And therefore, we should have serious national conversation on some of these issues. That yes, we don't want to question the generosity of any individual. Mm-hmm. But in that generosity, are you giving us because you want to give us and your heart has informed you? Or are you giving us in order to influence certain decisions by the congregation about you as a person or about you as a team of individuals? So this is something that I think it is very important, that not only the message should not necessarily be so high voltage political decisions or actions, but also should be a message that conforms with the issues that are meant for that particular congregation. Otherwise, I feel the bishop is doing it out of the need for us to rein in what we call bad manners that has pervaded this particular political environment. Mm-hmm. As a country, we must be disciplined. You see, I've heard you repeatedly say, in Tanzania, this election year, but in most of their headlines, they're hardly about elections or about politics. They're headlines about the economy, headlines about social issues, and many other issues that affect the people of Tanzania. But here in Kenya, almost every headline is a political headline. And this is something that we should improve our culture to the extent that there is life outside politics. And there is politics that should be measured within certain parameters.
All right.
Yep.
Asante sana. Kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Taifa leo anasema Ole Sapit akausha Kalonzo na Gachagua. Yes, that's I think one of the more political headlines, but most of our headlines today matters to do with taxation and how Kenyans are hard hit, how jobs and pay crisis hit families. That's a Daily Nation. Road tax tyranny on the Standard, and KRA goes for small traders, matters taxation as well on the front page of the Star. Thank you so much, Kipruto Arap Kirwa, former cabinet minister in the Kibaki One administration, Senator Danson Mungatana of Tana River, and Makali Mulu, MP Kitui Central. Our panelists this morning on State of the Nation, this being a Monday, of course, one of our most powerful panels. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time at TV47 today. After the break, Monday Blitz A lot of the weekend sports and analysis with Fred Arocho and Shatterboy. Do stand by for that. And later on, there'll be another conversation with my colleague Anne Odida. My name is Fred Indimuli. Have a lovely morning.